Hey, how's it going, guys? Gons here with another video for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. This is CERN Watch 2015. We're going to be keeping track of CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with it. Now, the reason why I'm making this video today, and I've been thinking about doing this video for a while, or at least starting a CERN watch for a while, because they are going to flip on the Large Hadron Collider about 9 days from when I'm recording this today on March 15th, and they're going to try to up the ante. They're going to double the power and energy that they used a couple years ago to find the Higgs boson. So, a lot of people are concerned about this experiment, but the reason why I was really prompted to make the video was because on a show called Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, and I've actually promoted this show in a couple videos in the past. Basically, it's a show that's out there. You can download the podcast. I usually describe it as the show that Coast to Coast AM was supposed to be. But they go through a lot of cool things, and they're open to the biblical view. Not that Coast to Coast AM isn't, but, they're definitely not a Christian show. So just a fair warning for any Christians out there that might be interested in listening to this show. But they had an episode last night called Nimrod Technology. And if you look at the image they used for the show, it was pretty much the cover of my Age of Deceit 2, along with artwork I made for an article I posted on the Face Like the Sun blog that I posted in December called The Tower of Babel and Particle Accelerators. And he actually he took a good chunk of my article and threw it into his long expose here, and I really don't mind. I don't care that he did that. I think the information is more important than necessarily sourcing it, although I was a little bit kind of taken aback. He was reading parts of his own article, which was lifted from my article on the show, and I thought, man, this sounds really familiar, and I checked in on it, and sure enough, he took it from my blog post, which is supposed to be a chapter in the book that I'm writing now. And so basically what I argue in the blog post is that a few things, but mainly the thing that I thought was interesting was that in the book of Jasher, it talks about the size of the Tower of Babel, and I thought it was very interesting. Here's the quote from Jasher. "And as to the tower which the sons of men built, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up 1/3 part thereof. And a fire also descended from heaven and burned another third. And the other third is left to this day. And it is of that part which was aloft, and its circumference is 3 days' walk." Now, I took a look at a day's walk in the Talmudic traditions, and it's called a derek yom. And basically, a derek yom is approximately 10 parasangs, and if you sort of measure it out, a single parasa is considered to be about 2.4 to 2.8 miles. If you do this times 10, you're talking about 28.8 miles. So that's one derek yom. Multiply that by 3, and you have somewhere between 72 and 86.4 miles, because the circumference of the third that was left, according to Jasher, is a 3 days walk. Now multiply that by a third, because remember, the earth took a third, the fire from heaven took a third, and a third was left, and that third that was left is a 3 days walk. So if you calculate it all out, we're talking about the Tower of Babel being the circumference of somewhere between 216 and 259 miles in diameter. Okay, so if we're talking about something that big, it's a little bit different from what we're used to thinking of the tower just being a ziggurat or just a tall tower. And compare that to CERN, and CERN right now is 27 kilometers, which I believe is about 17 miles. And 17 miles is far less than 259 miles. But the speculation that I propose is that perhaps what they were trying to do back in the days of the Tower of Babel was not unlike what CERN is doing now. And furthermore, I cite this thing called Desertron. This was a proposed particle accelerator for the United States. And this was supposed to be built in Waxahachie, Texas, back in the late 1980s. And the goal was to produce an 87.1 kilometer diameter particle accelerator, which calculates out to about 54 miles. So about twice the size of CERN. And so, I thought it was interesting that if we're able to scale this particle accelerator double the size. And that's what was proposed back in the 80s. And it got started, but Congress canceled it back in 1993 because of budget cuts, allegedly anyway. You know, if they're doing that now, I don't think it's that far off that they were trying to do something very similar back in the days of Babel. Because remember, with the Tower of Babel, we read in Genesis 11 that God said that nothing that they imagine to do will be impossible for them. So again, this is something that, you know, I thought was very interesting. I'm not saying the book of Jasher is inspired or it's, you know, above the word of God, but if it is a historical document, which I believe it is, and it speaks into some of the things that the Bible talks about, I think it informs us as to, you know, what we're looking for. Now, in terms of CERN today, now there's a lot of articles out there right now. The BBC came out with an article called LHC Restart. We want to break physics. And basically, you know, these guys are saying that instead of trying to test the truth of the theory that they've put forth, which allegedly is pretty good, but they're saying, you know, we don't want it to be good. We want to break that theory. And so here's the full quote. So instead of trying to test the truth of this theory, what we really want to do now is break it to show where it stops reflecting reality. That's the only way we're going to make progress. This is fascinating. This comes from Dr. Stephen Goldfarb, who is a physicist. And why are they trying to break physics to show where it stops reflecting reality, if not for the desire to open gateways, to open portals into extra dimensions? And in fact, there are plenty of sources that say that, you know, what they've been trying to do is open up different portals and look into different dimensions. You know, there's an article that I cited in one of my lectures from a couple years ago where they talked about this. They said, yeah, we should be able to look into alternate dimensions, and that's what we're kind of looking for. And so this is very, very bizarre in terms of why they're turning it back on and why it's going to be pushed to double the power. Now, along with this, and I'm going to include this subject just as part of this video because I think it's interesting, and I don't know if it has anything necessarily to do with each other, but at least throw it out there to you guys and give you guys, let you guys check this out and see what you think, because I'm not quite sure what to think of it. So here we go. CERN is going to turn on the Large Hadron Collider on the 15th of March. On the 20th of March, just 5 days later, we're going to see a total solar eclipse. Okay? Now, this is only going to be really seen from Norway, but very interesting. Why are they doing this? And I think, of course, my speculation is that there is occult significance to all of this. And, you know, just to point out as well, and this was pointed out in the episode, the Nimrod technology on Ground Zero, Nimrod's wife, according to some extra biblical text, was Semiramis. And Semiramis is also known as Isis. And what did Isis just do? Isis went into the city of Nimrod and began to destroy the artifacts, even taking some of the artifacts out. What is going on? They're about to turn on the Large Hadron Collider. You have the group ISIS taking out Nimrod. And along with that, we have a total solar eclipse happening 5 days afterwards. And then on April 4th, 2015, we're going to see the third of the Tetrads, the blood moon. Now, you know, I haven't really put too much significance into the blood moon. Chris White did a debunking of it in terms of, you know, people are saying this is the biblical reflection of, you know, what we're expected to see with the sun will be darkened, the moon will be turned to blood. And actually, that event is, I think, accurately, as Chris White points out, an end times event. That's going to usher in the day of the Lord's wrath. And I don't think that's what these blood moons are. But it's interesting that all these are taking place at the same time. You have ISIS taking out the city of Nimrod. You have the Large Hadron Collider, which I believe to be a modern day Tower of Babel, being fired up on the 15th of March. And then you have a total solar eclipse. The sun will be darkened, you know, on March 20th, and then the moon will be turned to blood on April 4th. So, of course, I think the occult are trying to usher in the Antichrist figure. This is exactly what they're trying to do. Now, this is the final piece I'm going to add to this, and this is kind of a side sort of thing, but I just found it so fascinating. I have been looking up at the moon every night, and just, it's making me wonder. And so here it goes. Basically, there is a YouTuber named Crow with 2 R's 777. And he filmed something that he calls the lunar wave. And, you know, I'll send you guys to the site, but basically here's the video of the lunar wave. And he caught this by accident back in 2012. And basically what he saw is this lunar wave. It's this sort of digital looking, hologram looking wave that moves over the surface of the moon. And, you know, at first he thought, you know, it's probably the camera or, you know, the compression or something like that. But what he noticed was that when he moved the camera, I guess he bumped the camera is the official story. When he did that, usually if it's a compression issue or a camera issue, any kind of distortions that will occur on the object that's on the screen will effectively move, you know, it'll go out of the way or whatever. Well, that's not what happened. What happened was the wave stayed on the moon, which is very interesting. And it kind of goes into, you know, why there's some credibility into what he's saying, or at least some possibilities. Now, he's come out and said in his recent video that he believes that the moon is just completely fake. He thinks that it's a fabricated system. He thinks the whole solar system is fabricated. And again, you guys can be the judge of that. But, you know, I don't know what to think of it. You know, at first he was saying perhaps they're using, you know, something like Project Bluebeam to cover up the moon, since they might be doing something weird up there and they're trying to cover it up. But again, you know, I don't know what to think. And in terms of the blood moon, he said that he caught some interesting things during the blood moon, the last 2 of the Tetrad. So I invite you guys to check out this video, 10 lunar waves filmed to date and what we know now. And then also he's got another video that really summarizes his findings. He posted it just a couple days ago. It's called "The Moon is an Illusion and No One Goes Above Low Earth Orbit." And he believes that the moon landing was a hoax, and which is interesting. Coincidentally, on Canary Cry Radio, we just had on Bart Sobrell, who thought the moon landing was also a hoax, and he has some pretty compelling argumentation for that. So personally, I don't know, man. I'm having a real tough time in terms of really deciding whether or not I believe the moon landing was a hoax or not. I tend to lean towards yes, it was a hoax. At the very least, the footage that they filmed was a hoax. Now, I've heard everything from, yes, we've been to the moon, which is sort of the status quo, to no, we've never made it past the Van Allen belt because of the radiation. There's no way that humans can survive through the radiation. To also others have said, actually, we have been to the moon, but they didn't want to film the things we found there, so they had to fake the footage to make it look like it was much more mundane than it really was. So again, I really don't know what to think of it. I'm just trying to keep tabs on it, and I'm trying to keep you guys informed about it. We're talking about things that we just can't know for sure, and we're talking about the future. And so those two things are left in the realm of speculation, so I'm not going to get dogmatic over them, but I think it's important to gather as much information as possible so as to not be deceived. And so when things do unfold, we know what's going on. We have a good grasp of the possible outcomes, so we're not taken by surprise by some of the things that might happen. So I'll try to gather some more information about CERN, maybe even do like an official video about CERN. If you guys want to see that, let me know, and I'll try to put something together over the weekend. In conclusion here, what we're seeing is this weird sort of convergence of this deep underground technology of CERN, this Large Hadron Collider, doing cosmic scale sort of testing. And one of the things they do is they keep it cooler than outer space. So, you know, there's this connection to the heavens above us, the sky, the atmosphere, and beyond, outer space. And we're trying to understand or reach into the heavens that way as well. And so there's this weird convergence happening. We are back in the days of Noah. Remember, Noah lived for 350 years after the flood. He lived for a total of 950 years, okay? Noah was probably alive, most likely alive, during the time of the Tower of Babel, okay? Noah had his son Ham. Ham had Cush. Cush was the father of Nimrod. That's only 2 generations removed from Noah. So Noah was probably definitely alive. And so we know that Jesus said in Matthew 24, as the days of Noah were. And, you know, some people have tried to debunk that or whatever, but I think there's something to it. And the evidence is pretty much all around us. So stay sober-minded, keep watch, and until next time, God bless, guys.